Tonight, we're in Dumfries, the biggest town in the south of Scotland. Famed for its history and connection to Robert Burns, it aims to become the fastest growing place for tourism over the next 10 years. But as the population of Scotland rises, the numbers living here are falling and getting older. This evening, people from all ages and political backgrounds have joined us here to talk about what matters most to them. Welcome to Debate Night. Debate Night is the show where the people get to ask the big questions, answering them on our panel this evening. From the Scottish Conservatives, Rachael Hamilton is MSP for Ettrick, Roxburgh and Berwickshire. Before politics, she worked in agriculture as an expert in soil management and crop production. Rachael was elected almost 10 years ago and became deputy leader of her party last year. Katharine Hay is Rural Affairs Specialist for the Scotsman. Last year, she swapped her desk for a backpack as she wanted to try journalism a different way. Katharine's been walking the length and breadth of Scotland ever since, reporting on local issues, which are published in print and online in Hay's Way. Also with us tonight, the former president of the National Farmers Union in Scotland, Andrew McCornick. Andrew is a beef and sheep farmer in southwest Scotland, and during 2 terms as president, he sat on the UK Government Trade and Agriculture Commission. From the SNP, Emma Harper is the MSP for South Scotland. Emma grew up on a dairy farm in here, Dumfries and Galloway. She spent 30 years working as a nurse, both in the United States and later here in Dumfries, before being elected to Holyrood almost 10 years ago. And finally, from Scottish Labour, Colin Smyth is the MSP for South Scotland. Colin grew up in Dumfries and is a former party spokesperson for energy, transport and rural affairs. He was appointed Scottish Labour's Older Persons Champion and is campaigning to establish the Commissioner for Older People in Scotland. Please welcome them all to Debate Night. And welcome to our studio audience here in Dumfries. It's great to be back with you again in the southwest, and you can join in the discussion from home wherever you happen to be in Scotland this evening. BBCDN is the hashtag you need if you're on social media, and our podcast of the show will be available for you to download straight after this broadcast. So let's get started tonight. Our first question comes from Eric Tate. Eric, evening.
Evening. Is Starmer's new EU deal a betrayal or a breakthrough?
Thank you,
And
Eric.
what does it mean for Scotland?
OK. Britain is back on the world stage, said the Prime Minister after this landmark deal, as he described it this week. Welcomed by many, including Scottish salmon, but the fishermen are not happy. Their association called it a capitulation. What do the farmers think? Andrew McCornick.
I think I would like to see the detail in this. It's very difficult to make a clear assessment on it until we know what the detail is. I'm really hoping that there's some good comes out of this. There should be better access to the European market. It certainly should cut down what I'll call friction, where the actual costs of being able to take stuff onto Europe is a lot easier. Therefore, it'll make it easier for us to export. I don't think it'll make a significant difference in product coming in, because we've been fairly lenient on the product coming in. But at the back of all of this, I would love to see the explanation for how we are actually going to get the benefits out of this if it's going to cost us money, because I believe there's money involved in this deal.
But are you pleased that we're talking to Brussels again, that the relationship is getting closer?
We need to be talking to Brussels, but equally we were still getting onto the market there. It was what I'm calling the costs of getting into that market was the issue. And that actually means what we've actually signed up for is basically we are going to accept European rules without having a say in them. And that really is a worrying aspect of this. And worse than that, the Parliament in Westminster's probably not going to get the chance to debate it, because it'll be going through Parliament in what they call a Constitutional Reform and Act, and Governments Act. And that actually, it basically sets the thing down for 21 days. Unless somebody debates it, it just goes on, it's ratified. Okay. And if somebody challenges it, the government gets a chance to answer it. But the actual Parliament Commons will not debate it. So this could be us accepting European rules, not being allowed to be a part of the discussion. And if we are invited into the discussion, we'll be little more than lobbyists, because we don't have a veto. We had a veto previously.
Rachael Hamilton, 3 deals in just a couple of weeks, the US, India, and now this EU deal as well. Is that a good thing?
Well, I think Andrew's absolutely right. The devil is in the detail. And I think we could find ourselves, without knowing the figures, this costing us a lot. I think some of the areas where people have been calling for less bureaucracy on export checks, on food safety and animal welfare have been welcome for organisations like Salmon Scotland, but everyone in the audience will have heard the criticism that came from the Scottish Fishermen's Federation. We know that in the post-Brexit deal after 2020, that there was a negotiation there to take 25% more fishing rights for fishermen in across the UK, and that was a good thing, and that was welcome, because the fishermen hated being in the common fisheries policy. They never wanted to go back into that. That was a huge criticism that they had of the EU at the time. And this is an opportunity for them to gain new rights. And we know that the EU have substantial rights as well to British waters.
Well, salmon producers have welcomed this,
Of
Rachel.
course.
Is this the beginning of the walk back from Brexit, do you think, towards Brussels?
Well, I am slightly concerned about the alignment with the EU. It has some benefits, but then it also has huge negatives as well. The Scottish White Fishing Federation, they had also criticised this. We're hearing comments like it's an utter betrayal. People are not happy with this, and if you speak to fishermen in Scotland, they feel that it's a step backwards. They wanted to see progress. They wanted to see getting control back of Scottish waters.
They've called a capitulation, I think.
Absolutely a capitulation. This is going backwards once again.
All right, let me hear from the audience. Man in the back row.
I have to ask, given when Theresa May was negotiating all of this way back, her original Lancaster House deal went a lot further than what this deal did. Given that no matter what deal Keir Starmer signed, he was going to get told, this is a betrayal, this is a capitulation, nothing is going to make Reform or Nigel Farage happy, shouldn't he have actually went further to bring in more of the benefits? Because I feel like he's just could have pushed further, had a bit more courage to bring in more benefits if we're going to have these negative impacts anyway.
So it's not a good enough deal for us. He could have got a better deal, do you think? He could have pushed further.
Presumably, when he's speaking with all these EU leaders, if they were willing to negotiate for these things back then, actually, he should have been pushing for that now. I don't think a lot has materially changed. Actually, a lot of things have changed to push them back together. Instead, he's taking all of the flack, all of the criticism, a lot of the issues with Scottish fishery, and not looking at where can we just go, let's go for the benefits. And if you look at the analysis, this is meant to bring about 0.2 of our GDP back in. It's not a huge number. Theresa May was talking about 2% instead of the 4 that we've lost. There's a big difference there in terms of what could have been pushed forward, and I think either we're going to end up back at the negotiating table this time next year or later, or we're just going to have to accept that this is a really big missed opportunity, and I think he could have just shown a lot more courage and a lot more strength.
Okay, thank you. Lady in the green top here.
The betrayal happened when the Conservative Party took us a hard Brexit route. We were, at the referendum time, we were told we would not leave the common market, the single market, and we were kicked out, we were hauled out, despite all commentary saying that that wouldn't happen. Coming together now with the EU, our biggest single trading partner, even 0.2% is better than the 4% loss that we have at the moment. I agree with the gentleman there that Theresa May's Lancaster House agreement was probably the best of a bad situation. But for whatever reason, Labour at the time couldn't seem to come together to work collegially with the other parties. I just think any step towards coming to a better agreement with EU is a positive move in the right direction.
Thank you.
Can I come in, Stephen?
Yeah, on you go.
I think we missed the chance of getting on one of Theresa May's dealers. I think she had 8 on the table at one time. We missed the chance of getting into the customs union. And that was not, it was basically because a Scottish SNP group abstained. With only a few votes from then, we could have been in here and we wouldn't be discussing this just now. And we would have been moving on without what I called earlier the friction. We could have been in a far better place to do that. But there's implications now with what has happened in some of the other trade deals that we've now done. What is this implying? Because we're aligning ourselves to Europe and we're trying to set up trade deals we're supposed to be doing as the United Kingdom, but what's going to happen to them? People are going to start questioning, well, basically you're behaving as a EU member, but we're not a member because we're paying money out.
Yeah. So you're talking about the American deal, for instance, how Trump will potentially view that as well. Emma Harper from the SNP, you want us to rejoin the European Union. You welcome this deal?
So it's a step in the right direction. It's not EU membership. Like most of Scotland didn't vote to exit the European Union. So it's a step in the right direction. I know there are, obviously there's what Rachael is describing with the Scottish Fishermen's Federation. Absolutely think that they've been sold down the river again, which is what happened previously.
Have they?
And but not every. So the inshore fishermen will probably welcome this because it will reduce trade barriers. So our West Coast Sea Products in Kirkcudbright, for instance, they had issues when Brexit happened because of the supply chain disruption for them. But the inshore fishermen will find it easier because of the way that the supply chain will be easier for them to get their product to the European markets. And I'm sure that our beef farmers and sheep farmers and our venison producers who make world-class products in Scotland will welcome this as well. So it's something that, as we see what comes out of the deal, we need to make sure that our farmers in Scotland are supported, our fishers are supported. But, you know, this deal was struck without the Scottish ministers even being around the table. You know, it's the same with having access to Europe. I mean, we have no say in the matter. We're not at the table making the discussions, making our case for what would be better for us in Scotland.
One of the things on the table, better access for young people to Europe. Young lady in the green, down here, yes.
The cost of living crisis that we have going on, we should welcome anything that's going to keep a little bit extra money in our pockets, because everything's so expensive nowadays. Like, I'm only 24 and I work 40 hours a week and it doesn't cover the basic necessities, let alone having to do luxuries and fun things. Like, it's you pay bills and you eat, and that's all you can do with life because everything's so expensive.
Thank you. Colin Smyth from Scottish Labour, was this deal good enough or is it a capitulation?
I certainly don't think it's a capitulation at all, and it's interesting Rachael Hamilton used that phrase about a fishing deal, which in terms of access to fisheries is exactly the same as the one that the Conservatives signed.
It's 12 years longer, Colin.
In 2019, it's the same deal. There is not any additional access to fisheries from the EU.
But it's far longer than the fishermen wanted.
It maintains the UK's access as it stands at the moment, but it also brings in an extra £368 million of investment in the fisheries sector. It lifts the ban on the sale of shellfish, which is hugely important in this area where 90% of what's landed is shellfish, and it breaks down some of those barriers to export our products into the EU, and that is crucially important. That's why it's been welcomed in agriculture, it's been welcomed by Scottish Salmon, it's been welcomed by all sorts of organisations, Federation, a small business, the CBI, because people see this as a reset in their relationship with Europe, a grown-up approach to Europe after many years of the friction.
Is this the beginning of the road back?
I think it's the beginning of a new relationship with Europe that actually wants to make sure we've got a grown-up approach to our closest trading partners in the EU.
Eventually leading again to EU membership?
Well, not at this stage, absolutely not. But this is about boosting British businesses and export markets into the EU. And that's why it's been warmly welcomed by business. It will boost the economy, and that's something that people, frankly, should welcome.
Thank you. Man with the beard in the middle of the audience. Yeah.
So if it's about boosting British businesses, why wasn't Scotland invited to the table?
Colin Smyth?
Well, Scottish Government ministers are in discussions with UK ministers all the time, but trade agreements...
Emma Harper said they didn't know anything about it.
They didn't know about it until it was announced by the media.
The negotiating a trade deal sits with the UK Government and the UK Parliament. We have two parliaments and we have Scottish politicians in both of those parliaments, and that's where trade deals are agreed. But there's constant discussions between Scottish ministers and UK ministers. And the problem the SNP have is they don't really know how to respond to this. Emma says it's a capitulation for the fisheries sector, but she wants to take us back into the common fisheries policy, which would mean even fewer access to fishing rights from the Scottish Government. So the SNP don't know what their position is when it comes to this.
So there's countries in the EU that don't even have fishing waters, right? They're landlocked countries. They have more say than Scotland does in terms of how we negotiate our fishing policy in the future. So I would recommend that we are a country that takes our own affairs and our own decisions and be at the table in order to be in the room when these decisions are being discussed.
Katharine Hay, you've been walking around Scotland testing the mood of the nation for the Scotsman when it comes to rural matters. What's the opinion on Brexit and how that has worked in Scotland?
I mean, I think just with this new deal that's come through, I was talking to a very large shellfish and fish exporter in Scotland, and he was just saying how before Brexit, you know, it was just one form that he had to put with his produce and sent it, and it was all pretty straightforward, whereas when Brexit happened, it was suddenly 70 different documents he had to fill, and if there was just one error in one of those documents, the whole lot would be rejected. So obviously this deal that's happened, it's going to hopefully make it a lot easier in terms of wiping away some of the red tape that's been in place. But something that I was just talking to some farmers about this week in response to the announcement of the deal and how Keir Starmer was talking about it, is the language that he uses. He talks about, I mean, I totally understand what you're saying about cost of living, cost of food. It's all, you know, through the roof. It's really difficult to just make ends meet for so many of us. But the way he talks about sort of providing cheap food, you know, it's got to be cheap food, cheap food. I mean, farmers, it's hardly uplifting to hear that it's sort of, for some of them who I've spoken to, they say it feels like you're sort of on a race to the bottom. You know, you're dealing with prices that are cheaper in Europe, and it means that you're maybe having to, I don't know, we hope not lower standards, because we have very high standards in the UK, but it's just this language that he was using, and it's, you know, you go to somewhere like Italy and the food's quite reasonable to buy, but they don't talk about it being cheap, they talk about it being amazing, and we don't talk about the food in this country like that. I think our politicians have a lot to, I don't know, step up their game and promote the food in this country. So that was just something that came out of the discussions around this deal, around what the mood of the farmers are.
Let me hear from the audience. Man in the front row first, yes.
Two things. I think the point about the economics and the benefits to it, I spoke to local fishermen in the Western Isles, and they're not agreeing with what you're saying, because they are seeing the struggle within that waters and the control of that waters and how that's... And you're talking about the fishermen. They're the people who bring these products back to land so business can make money. So I don't agree with that statement that's been made. And the second point I would make is, Emma is quite correct. I think this policy has been rushed through. There's not been discussions, clear discussions. I think it's another rushed policy, and we're not getting all the answers to that yet properly. And Keir Starmer's not only done it now, he's also done it with a defence policy. He's now putting a defence policy agreement with Brussels. That means Brussels will be in control of the defence of this country, our sovereign country. And that's appalling that that is going through, and there's not been a discussion, a real thorough discussion on that. And I think it needs to be questioned by politicians.
Yeah, this is I think, about UK troops being involved in action on alongside European armies. A lady in the red top there. Sorry, on you go.
I cannot believe that we are sitting here talking about the scraps from the Brexit table and totally ignoring the fact that the vast majority of Scotland voted against coming out of the EU in the first place. We should be up in arms about all this happening because it's against everything that Scotland asked for. Northern Ireland voted to stay in the EU and they got it. We voted a much stronger version. We didn't get it. That's what we should be talking about.
Do you hope this is the beginning of the road back?
I hope that Scotland will become independent and we will join the EU and that England will follow us later, as our friends.
Your views on everything you hear on the show tonight. The hashtag is BBCDN. Tonight we're in Dumfries. Next week we're going to be in Hamilton for a by-election special programme. The week after that we're in Glasgow. So if you'd like to be in the audience for either of those shows, just go to the website bbc.co.uk/debate night, or you can scan the QR code that's on the screen. Let's go to our second question of the night, which comes from Martina Duncan. Evening, Martina.
Hello. Should there be a fee for missed NHS appointments?
Thank you. Every month, 1 million NHS appointments are missed, about 1 in 10 in Glasgow, costing tens of millions of pounds. Rishi Sunak, when he was Prime Minister, suggested a £10 charge. Others have suggested that as well. What do you think, Martina, and why are you asking that question?
I believe something should be done into that direction. We are all waiting for appointments. Some of us are waiting months or even years, life-saving, life-changing appointments, and then we can't get them. Of course, one of the reasons is the NHS hasn't got any money, there is not enough staff and all of that. But we also have to take some responsibility ourselves. We all miss an appointment every so often. I get that. You know, we all have busy lives. But personally, I know a person who, out of 10 appointments, Mrs. A just because she can't be bothered to turn up on the day and nothing's happening. Because it's the NHS, it's my right to see a doctor. I just phone again, make a new appointment, and that's just not working anymore.
OK. Rachael Hamilton, politicians keep talking about radical reform of the NHS. Could this be the beginning of it? Is that step too far?
It's such an interesting question because we've got 800,000 people at the moment on an NHS waiting list. And I haven't heard that proposal for quite a while. It was something that we talked about a few years ago, and it sort of seemed to drop. But John Swinney, in his programme for government, announced that he would make 100,000 more GP appointments available. And the GPs responded by saying that wasn't possible. It wasn't realistic. So we need to get to a point where people value their appointments, they value the GPs, because I know, knocking on doors of my constituents, people that are in severe pain, you know, they're suffering, they're on waiting lists, cataract operations, 2 years. And so it's almost educating people and an awareness that it's selfish to miss your appointment.
But we know that. We all know that.
I would agree with the audience member on the being lenient to some people who miss their appointments, because in a rural area like here and in where I represent in the borders, people cannot get a bus, and sometimes there is unreliability about the ability for them and the accessibility to get to appointments. So I think we really need to address that, and that might help.
But they've still got a telephone to call and say they're not going to be there.
That's true, but it is an actual part of reality when you knock on doors and speak to people, that there is such a problem getting from A to B, particularly to health appointments, and it's not always the fault of an individual. So charging people £10 in that circumstance would probably be slightly unfair. I mean, if there was a way to do it that we could look at the issues surrounding the reasons that people don't go to their appointments, I think it would be a lot better way to go about things.
And I think there's been research from Glasgow University into this, and there are a wide range of reasons: shame, alienation, that people miss it. I know we've got medical professionals in the audience tonight. I'd love to hear from them. Man in the middle. Yes, on you go.
So I work for NHS Dumfries and Galloway as a psychiatrist. So, I mean, for me, I completely appreciate what the lady in front of me has said, and I think I take her point. But I think I'd agree with that. It's a bit more of a nuanced problem than that. And, for example, people who have mental health issues, you know, can miss appointments, you know, because they're acutely unwell. So I think the point about the circumstances of the missed appointment, you know, needs to be taken into consideration. But also, at the same time, I do also take forward the point of it is a rural area, but people do have telephones and can notify, you know, that they're going to miss an appointment or things like that. Sometimes I think also health boards can do a lot better to try and become more inclusive. I mean, I myself, for example, previously worked with people with learning disabilities. There's barriers to why some of these people can, you know, can't access things like clinics and things like that and do a lot of home visits. So I think there needs to be a lot more thought offered by health boards in terms of what can actually the health boards do to try and minimise, you know, these missed appointments, and how can health be delivered in different ways other than just centrally in clinics.
Thank you. And man with the glasses and his... Jess, yeah, on you go.
I'm a doctor in Dumfries as well, and whilst these missed appointments are a tremendous source of frustration and one of many sources of waste within the health service, I would say that to charge our users to actually, where they missed an appointment, is actually to defy the principle of the NHS.
So, using your expertise, what should we be doing about it?
I think perhaps if there was maybe more administration support so far as encouraging patients and making sure they're actually able to attend the appointment, so making these checks prior to the appointment so that they feel supported to actually attend.
So do you send out text messages in advance, reminders at the moment?
I think there's a combination of text messages and emails as well. I think it varies from health board to health board as well, but those are options that are utilised. But perhaps if there were also phone calls, then maybe perhaps for the older generation, that's a different way in which they could engage with people.
A human voice.
Yeah.
Emma Harper, if you don't turn up at a restaurant and you've got a reservation now, they'll take a charge off your credit card. Some dentists will charge if you don't turn up. Why not GPs?
So I agree with both gentlemen that are speaking that I think it would be probably punitive to just charge people for missing an appointment. I think we need to look at why they're missing appointments. When I worked in NHS Dumfries and Galloway, our outpatient department had a big board that was tracking percentage of no-shows and missed appointments, and so they are tracking that data. And there's a difference between missing an appointment for your hip replacement, hip operation, versus missing an appointment for something else. So I think that because of the wide range of services that the National Health Service offers, and whether the appointment is for your GP or at the hospital, we need to look at that. And I agree that we could be using technology in terms of text messaging, emailing or telephone calls for our older patients. So there's a variety of ways that we should be looking at it and see if we can reduce the number of missed appointments.
Anybody in the audience think that this is something that we should be looking at, that it is the way to try and cut down on these missed appointments? Apart from the lady who asked the question. The lady next to you. Yes, on you go. What do you think?
Hi. I think that technology is essential nowadays. Why the app, the NHS Scotland app, is not working properly, so you cannot, automatically, independently change your appointment. And I think also, as the doctor was saying, there is the need of reshaping NHS, which is probably a haunting task, but we need to see where there is waste and where there is saving, because what is a fantastic institution, but the kind of services, I come from a family of all doctors in Italy, and the kind of services we receive here is nothing comparable to other far better organized system. And it's excruciating. Nowadays, after COVID, you cannot actually see your GP. It's only telephone calls. I'm talking about Dumfries. So there are a lot of problems, and we are making probably the saving in the wrong place.
OK, thank you. Colin Smyth, south of the border, not far from here, Wes Streeting is saying nothing should be off the table when it comes to reforming the NHS. How about charging for GP appointments that are missed?
Wes Streeting certainly not suggesting that we should do that, but the lady does raise a really important issue that Wes Streeting is talking about the fact that it's a challenge to get an appointment in the first place. You've got to be up crack of dawn to get on that phone before 8 AM to book a GP's appointment. Which makes it all the more important that it should be followed and attended. Which makes it all the more important that we should be looking at new technology, for example, online bookings. And the reaction, I think, tonight from a healthcare professional is similar to the one that I got when I raised that suggestion a couple of years ago, when it was suggested that the fact that it would be so bureaucratic to impose, and what happens if somebody then doesn't pay? Do you then say you can't get a medical appointment in the future? Are doctors really there to actually start chasing people for payment? So I think it's a wrong proposal. The biggest challenge is actually getting people healthcare appointments in the first place. My inbox is full of people who are waiting 2 or 3 years for a hip replacement or a knee replacement. I've got young people waiting more than 4 years for a neurological assessment at the moment. You've got people in this region who cannot register with an NHS dentist at all. You can't get an appointment with an NHS dentist because you can't actually find one in the first place. And these are the big issues that we need to tackle at the moment.
Thank you. Let me hear from the lady with a hand up. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so I've been on the waiting list for a knee replacement for quite a few years, and I'm quite happy to say that I'm having it next month. But I was away out of the country a couple of weeks ago, and I came home to 4 different appointments by post, so there's a cost inferred with that. I also had some very panicked voicemails because I was actually put on the wrong surgeon's waiting list. So appreciated that and saw accepted the apology, but then another 4 letters came with all the other appointments for the run-up. So within those 8 letters, there was quite a lot of admin cost.
And just inefficiency as well. Good luck with the operation when it comes. Man at the back with the tattoos on his arm. Yeah, on you go.
Yes, I don't know where everybody's GP is, but anytime I have to phone mine, it's an appointment straight away and there's never any hassle. So I guess I'm just lucky then.
Yeah.
So I am.
Yeah. Everyone wants to know who you're with now. We'll talk about that. And then man with the beard in the middle. Yeah.
So Rod Stewart's paying for my son to get an NHS autism assessment done privately. He's been waiting longer than what he should be. there's thousands of other parents out there, and John Swinney says we're meeting their targets. What targets is he meeting, and how does he expect this to be fair?
Gosh, that's a story. How did that happen? How did that come about?
So I'm a volunteer and ambassador with the King's Trust, and I was speaking at a fringe event at the Scottish Labour Party conference on children and young people, and I bumped into Anna Sauer and just kind of struck up a conversation, and he put me in touch with someone who works in Jackie Bailey's office.
Okay, and from there that led to Rod Stewart, and well, good luck to your son with that. Katharine Hay, is this something that we should be looking at? If we're missing, in Glasgow, up to 1 in 10 GP appointments are missed, should we be charging people at missed appointments?
I think, I mean, it's come up already by a couple of medical professionals here that it's not always clear as to why and what the big reason is behind all these appointments being missed. I mean, my instant feeling is that obviously something maybe is a bit wrong with perhaps how we're going about trying to book them. I know certainly just from rural communities, speaking to people in rural areas, I mean, there's talk of tech, there's talk of, oh, everybody has a mobile phone. But I speak to farmers, foresters, people out in the field, you know, fine, they're happy to, they're up at the crack of dawn. In fact, they're up probably earlier than the call at 8 a.m. where you have to book in for a doctor. But, you know, to then be told, oh, we'll just call back at any time, sort of across the morning. You know, it's difficult when someone is out in the field and they don't have signal. Certainly from walking around this country, there's a lot of areas where you just don't get signal for quite big stretches. So actually it's a very difficult, quite clunky process for people to not only just book an appointment, but to get a call back. And I can imagine that actually ends up probably just creating a bit of apathy, or I don't know, among people, that it's just a bit of a clunky system to try and get an appointment. So I don't think penalising, I don't think charging is good, because obviously there is also research that's come out saying that a lot of the higher proportion of these appointments that are missed are in areas where there's higher deprivation, and so with that comes lots of different reasons as to why people are missing these appointments. And I think to start charging would be, well, just you don't know why, so it's a little bit it's a bit difficult to start charging people for that reason. But certainly looking into maybe you know, we've talked about how it could be, you've got 4 letters in the post. You know, there's obviously a bit of a disconnect here, and there needs to be maybe a bit of a refresh of how appointments are not only kind of put out there, but how people can book them as well.
Thank you. Andrew McCornick.
I'm sitting here, it sounds such a great idea in the face of it, charge £10 for if you don't turn up for an appointment. It's a penalty for you. But I think from what I'm hearing, especially from the medical professionals, it doesn't seem to wash with me. It's very difficult. Colin made the point, are you going to take them to court if they don't pay their £10? And that's kind of the downside of what we're looking at here. But the technology's there. I'm actually getting an appointment next week. I've had a text message about it, I've had an email, and some of these people that are getting the letters, if they haven't got their contact details in it, will it be that easy for the likes of the NHS to make that contact? I'm almost certain I'll get another text message reminding me of this appointment for next week before it actually happens. And it's actually a telephone appointment I've got with a specialist within Dumfries and Galloway Royal Infirmary. So for some of us it seems to be working, but I think the technology's got to be used a lot smarter and a lot better than it is. And this not having anything off the table, I think that's a good idea. We need to look at every possible option that there is, see what will work, and maybe even try it, experiment with it, and see if it works fine. If it doesn't work, well, we've tried that, well, let's see what we can move on to.
OK, back to Martina, who asked the question. Not finding great enthusiasm for it here tonight, Martina.
Absolutely fine. Like you just said, the technology is there, and I'm in the same boat. I get a text message, I get the text message the day before and all of that. It needs to be used. What I don't agree with is this kind of attitude, oh, I made that appointment, or I just make another. We have to take some responsibility. These appointments are like gold dust at the moment. I have waited and waited for months for a life-changing appointment. And then just to be told, okay, there's another 6 months if you're lucky. Well, there's so many missed appointments and there's so many people who need the service you're just waiting for. It's heartbreaking. And in the meantime, I can't work until this is sorted. But the way the benefit system works, and just being introduced now with the benefits cut, that's not going to get me anywhere either, because I either can't get it, or I get it in a year when the issue is already resolved, but I can't see my doctor to actually get better and to get the care I need in order to get back to work.
Can I come back in, Stephen? Just briefly. I live fairly close to Dumfries, and there's more than once I've had a telephone call, would you be able to make an appointment tomorrow at such and such a time? Because they know somebody's cancelled an appointment. And that, again, we need to be able to make more use of that as well. And they've obviously got me in some circle somewhere. He's close, he could come in a hurry.
OK, all right. Thank you. Thanks for your question, Martina, and good luck. And your views from home on all these things. The hashtag is BBCDN on social media. Let's move on to our third question of the night, which comes from Heather McKean. Heather, evening.
Hello. Given the ageing population in Dumfries and Galloway, how do the panellists propose to encourage young people to stay here?
Right, Scotland's population is growing, fastest rate since the 1940s, but not down here where it is falling. I'm going to pick on you as a young person, Heather. What's your situation at the moment? What's happening?
I'm at home just now, but in September I'm going up to Stirling for university because I just feel that there's not much here to do. You know, I go to work just now and then I come home. If my friends are down, I'll see them. But none of them want to come down because they've got stuff to do up in Glasgow. And I remember when we were all like looking at where we would go for uni, everyone was just talking about how they couldn't wait to get out of Dumfries. They couldn't wait to get out of Dumfries. There'd be so many more opportunities out of Dumfries. I think it's a bit of a shame. I feel like it's a nice place, and I just wonder if anybody has any ideas to try and keep us here.
Great question. Do you think you'll come back?
I'm not sure.
OK. Katharine Hay, this is something you'll have heard time and time again travelling around Scotland as you are at the moment. What needs to happen in places like Dumfries and Galloway to keep people like Heather?
Yeah, you're right. It's an absolutely beautiful place. In fact, since March last year, I've come across a lot of places that I really like, sort of individually, places that I've thought are really special in Scotland. But I will say, up until now, Dumfries and Galloway has been my favourite region to walk through. I really enjoyed my time here.
Good try with the audience there.
I'm not trying to win you guys over, but no, but just for a combination of, as you mentioned, it's just beautiful, but also just people in place is why it really stuck with me. But yeah, you make a good point there that obviously just because somewhere is beautiful doesn't mean that it pays the bills, doesn't mean to say that it provides opportunities to stay and work. And I do see this in quite a lot of areas around the very picturesque areas of Scotland. In fact, I was talking to a young man who is from Dunnet Head, so the most northern point on the British mainland, incredibly remote, very rural. And he actually took it a bit further than your comment. He said it's an injustice. He said it's unfair that I can't grow up in this area knowing that I could live here because there's opportunity, because there's an industry. And I mean, we're talking about Dunnet Head. I mean, that really is quite remote up there. But yeah, and I really felt for him because I was sort of entering that part of Scotland and maybe here as well, thinking, oh, it's so nice. There's all these sort of beautiful rolling hills or mountains or landscape. But actually, you know, we need industry. And one area in particular, again, another very rural area, Barra in the Outer Hebrides. I met a young couple who were from there, and I know it's quite a big deal, but they're building a distillery and it's going really well, and they've managed to hire a lot of people on the island, not just people who they went to school with. Families are actually coming back to the island, and it's a little kind of example of where there's this reverse trend of depopulation. Another one is some pockets on the west coast. You've got like the Isle of Egg, where actually partly that is also to do with the community having a bit more of a control over the land there, and it makes it a bit more attractive for young people to stay because they have a bit more agency over the land and what they can do with it. So I think the real key driver is, in answer to your question, just from what I've witnessed walking around Scotland and talking to young people, is, encourage entrepreneurial minds, encourage industry, encourage businesses, you know, to keep places thriving. Because as much as, it's a beautiful place, there needs to be that energy as well, which...
I would love to hear from you if you've been away maybe and then come back here, but let's go to the hands up just now. Man on the end, yes.
So I am also a young person that's going to be leaving the region later this year, because it's not just the fact that there's nothing to do, but all the kind of things you can do are not anywhere close, and then trying to get the public transport to those places. I feel like that's kind of one thing that might be overlooked, well, not overlooked, but I feel like there's, out of the few things there is to do, nobody can really get to them. Because Dumfries has a lot of things compared to where I live to do, but then getting to Dumfries is a huge pain.
And it's a big area, Dumfries and Galloway as well. Would you like to come back, ideally?
Probably, unless I can like drive, probably not. Because it's, a lot of people talk about the scenery and how beautiful Dumfries and Galloway is, which I totally agree with. But then if you can't get there to see it, then there's not much point in saying how beautiful it is.
OK, thank you. Man in the back row. Yeah.
So I'm currently a student in Dumfries at the UWS campus here. I study social work. My class size is 7. The year below me, the class size is 3. We're not advertising what we do have to offer to draw people in. We're not advertising our heritage.
Come on, give us the big sell. Go on.
Yeah. Well, if you want to sell, we've got centuries of heritage. We've got a Buddhist monastery 30 minutes drive down the road. We've got castles. We've got nature reserves. We've got a dark park. There's lots of things in the region. We don't advertise it. We also don't link our colleges and universities with business needs in the area and create that connection. So we have South of Scotland's Enterprise. I don't think I've ever seen them come into the university or college. I've done a degree in Dumfries and Galloway twice now. Where are they? Why are we not going in, getting our young people and connecting them to businesses, to jobs, and getting them to stay that way?
OK, so many hands up in the audience. I'll come to you in just a second. But Emma Harper, you're a good example of this because you were from here, went away, but you did come back. What needs to happen to make sure more people are doing that?
So I take on board all the issues around what we have to offer in Dumfries and Galloway is amazing. And I left when I was 22, worked in California for 14 years, and then chose to come back. So I had an amazing experience and then came back as well. So I would like to make sure that we have, yes, we need jobs, we need good amenities, we need young people to be able to get around the region. You know, if you're up to age 22, you can have a free bus pass. That might only work if there are buses. I know there's real challenges to getting around our really rural region as well. So I would basically be looking at how we are promoting the region using our South Scotland Destination Alliance. I am aware that our South Scotland Enterprise Agency is meeting with the colleges, Dumfries and Galloway College and the universities, University of West of Scotland, University of Glasgow and the Open University on the campus to market really what we have in terms of learning and the opportunities. So, and I think probably maybe South Scotland Destination Alliance maybe need to be out there a wee bit more saying what we've got. So that's it.
All right, let me hear from the audience. Young lady on the end of the row. Yeah.
So originally I relocated from Manchester up to here just shy of 4 years ago, and I currently have a 3-year-old son and an 8-year-old son. And what I found personally is the ability to present them with so much nature and outdoor time, which they would not have had access to back in Manchester, not in the same capacity. However, there is also the angle, as everyone is saying and agreeing with, that Dumfries is essentially dead in a lot of respects. If you want to go bowling or you want to do anything that a typical age demographic such as that wants to do, you have to drive down the A75, which is a death trap, by the way, and then you arrive in Carlisle. You've got to spend an hour and a half in travel. You're doing all of your stuff there, and then you're coming back, and it kind of takes the shine off for your kids when you're saying, look at all this beautiful nature that you've got around you. And you as an adult, you can appreciate that in a different way as they can. They're thinking, well, sack this, I want to go bowling. You know, you want to be able to present them with both. It doesn't have to be one or the other. There should be more put into place, like where I'm originally from, in Stockport, the high street was completely dead. There was nothing on it. And now, if you look at how that's going, it is booming. It is doing fantastic with independent businesses because there was money fueled into them. We don't get that here, not in the same capacity. And I worry for my children because I want to keep them here. I want to see them grow up here and appreciate exactly what they have, because nature is fundamentally everything to me. But for them as individuals, they are individuals. They will make up their own minds, and I don't want them to turn 18 and go, I'm so bored here, I've got nothing, I've got no opportunity. I want them to have all, basically.
Thank you. How interesting. Lady in the black top in the middle, yes.
I think it's like all well and good saying, going on about nature and how beautiful the landscape is, which I totally agree with. But because of that, it means that a lot of the businesses around here are hospitality based. And as a young person, like I am working in hospitality at the moment before I head up to uni, but like there's not a progression from hospitality. Like there's only so far up the hospitality ladder you can go. There's not any diversification in like other roles. Like there's not any tech businesses. Like there's not any I don't know how to word this, but there's not any like other industries outside of hospitality really in Dumfries
Where
and
else?
Galloway.
Where else do you go? Yeah, so many hands up. I'll come to you in just a second. But Rachel, this is an issue on the other side of the south of Scotland, where you're from as well. What do we need to do to keep these young people in areas like this?
I mean, I'm so sad that people want to move out of rural areas. The city was never for me. I was always a country girl, and I'm glad to say that my 2 eldest daughters have come back from university to the Borders to set up a coffee shop together because they want to do that entrepreneurial thing. And they're really bringing something back for young people because we think differently to them. They're serving matcha and cine buns, and they're having run club and you know, poetry clubs and events that support young mums, etc. And these are we need young people. We absolutely need young people in areas, but there are certain levers that we need to pull. Now, if you look at the reserved policies that are coming from the UK government with regards to corporation tax, and national insurance contributions, if you look, you know, they have gone up. So businesses are really struggling right now. And then you look at the devolved matters from the SNP government, you know, they haven't passed on the business rate relief for tourism businesses. There are certain economic levers that do have to be put into place to allow businesses to thrive and to allow young people to actually look at an area and say, I can see a future in this and I want to be part of that. I hope that by the time you've been away to Stirling, that you'll, you know, that the SNP will pull some of those levers, perhaps new graduate apprenticeships and other mechanisms that they can put into place, and you will come back.
Okay. Andrew McCornick, I think your boys stayed here, didn't they? They didn't go away, or they went away and came back?
Well, my eldest sons, yeah, my 2 eldest, my son and my daughter were, I would say, in public sector jobs. My 2 youngest are actually in farms. One's in East Ayrshire and one's in the home farm. So they've never really went away. But I think that the question I would love to see being answered is, nobody's mentioned the trades. There are great opportunities here, and I think there's a massive gap. When you try to get a tradesman in Dumfries, you'll know how difficult it is. And these people have got jobs that could make them an awful lot more than taking on tens of thousands of debt with going away to university. The trouble is the social aspect behind that. When you go to a university, I know I did it, I was lucky, I was the only one in my family that ever achieved it. There's actually another life that you can learn and be about, but I still wanted to come back. I had a passion for the land, I had a passion for agriculture, and it's obviously stayed with me all my life, but it's only made its way onto 2 of my family, so it can't be that in the genetics.
Okay. Colin Smyth, is it just a fact of nature that in places like Dumfries and Galloway, and the Borders as well, that young people will gravitate away to the cities? Is it just natural?
I mean, it's part of growing up that a lot of people want to leave the area, go to the big cities, go to university. I mean, I'm probably not a good example. I'm a born and bred Doonhamer. I've always lived in Dumfries, and I suspect I won't live anywhere else. But I did go to Glasgow for a few years for university. I was also a teacher, and sadly, the point that Heather and others have made was a very familiar conversation I had with young people who I taught. I'll always remember a conversation at Stranraer Academy, where a 6-year class were just getting ready to leave. And I said, what are you going to do next? More than half of them said, leave Stranraer, was the point they made. And the more I spoke to those young people, it was because they felt there wasn't those opportunities that they may have in the cities here in Dumfries and Galloway. Those high-skilled, those high-paid jobs just weren't there. So people felt they were being forced to leave the area, even if they wanted to stay in the area. And that's wrong, because we haven't seen the investment to create those jobs in the area. The lady raised the A75. There's been no investment in our infrastructure for many years. If you're a young person trying to get on the ladder for housing, house prices are going up all the time in the region. And Andrew raises a really important point there about trades. At the moment, we have a waiting list in the local college because of college cuts for apprenticeships in those very trades that our businesses are crying out for. So what we need to see is investment in this region in the high-skilled, high-quality jobs that will keep young people here and actually attract more young people to what is the best region in Scotland.
I know we've got a lot of hands up here, but when you talk about investment in the region, that takes us to one more question that a lot of you were keen to talk about here this evening, and it comes from Gary Blissett. Gary, evening.
Evening. What do the panel think about the possibility of a new national park for southwest Scotland?
Thank you. 20 years since Scotland last had a new national park. Galloway was chosen to be the next one, but that's proved to be very controversial, as we're about to find out. I suspect there's been a government consultation about it. We're told a decision might be coming quite soon on this. Emma Harper, what can you tell us?
So I understand there is a statement next Thursday in Chamber about the National Park. I know it has been quite divisive in the commentary and the engagement that I've had. I've engaged with people on both sides of opposing or supporting.
So has the decision been taken?
I don't believe it has. No, I mean, we'll hear from a statement next week what came out of the consultation, and we'll have an opportunity to question the Cabinet Secretary. I know that in my work regarding the National Park, I've been, right since the beginning, probably about 8 years ago, asking the questions about how will it benefit? Because I want to focus on sustainable economic development across our region, which goes back to the jobs question as well, and supporting our rural economy, for instance. I've been questioning objectively around how would the governance be, where would planning sit, and all of these issues around the national park proposals. I was in Cairngorms last Sunday and Monday as part of the Rural Committee's Natural Environment
Seems
Bill.
to have worked well there, hasn't it?
Well, there's actually been some issues raised with Cairngorms and Lomond and Trossachs as well, in terms of do we need an independent assessment, an independent evaluation of how the 20 years of national parks has been run. So there's been pros and cons, and I think you know, this time, well, next Thursday, we'll probably have a bit more clarity about what the consultation found, and then what the next steps will be.
Colin Smyth, people watching this in other parts of Scotland might think, if you're offered a national park, why wouldn't you want to take it?
It's a very good question, Stephen, but I've always been of the view that if we are to have a proposal for a national park from the Scottish Government, it needs to be a national park for Galloway, made by the people of Galloway, and one that suits our local needs. And I personally think, and I appreciate I'm within kicking distance of the former president of the National Farmers Union, who might have a slightly different view, but I believe that the government could produce a model that would actually meet our local needs, that would allow farming and forestry to continue to flourish, but still actually bring that investment that national parks bring through additional visitor numbers. We'll find out next Thursday. I don't think, unfortunately, the soundings that we're hearing are going to be very positive around that, and I think it has the potential to be a real missed opportunity for the region.
Do you think it's not going to happen?
I suspect that it may not be the case, but we'll find out next Thursday, and it will mean that we will lose out on the investment that comes from national parks, because of course national parks do get investment every year from the government. But if the government do not go ahead with a national park next week, what they need to answer the question is, what is their vision to rebuild the economy of Dumfries and Galloway? Because what we've heard tonight from people is that the current economic model is not working.
All right, Katharine Hay.
Picking up on something that you said about farmers, you know, working with farmers and making it a sort of good national park. I mean, we need to look at what we have already in Scotland, and the difficulty is it's already so fractious in Dumfries and Galloway, with you know, whether we want it or not, and I'm not here to say whether we have it or not, but it's just talking to farmers in the current national parks. I mean, there's obviously a lot of unease about the fact that it doesn't really support farming. I spoke to some farmers who went on a field trip to France about 20 years ago, and they came back fully inspired. They'd gone to the Cevennes in France, where they have a great system in place to support farmers' produce. They have a good production line, they have a good way of marketing the produce, and so farmers were fully supported in the national park, and they worked in harmony with nature, and it was all working very well. But the farmers came back with all these ideas to the Cairngorms National Park, and 20 years later, that's not the case.
All right, okay. That's why we need a model that actually meets the needs of the local community.
I can see why, farmers...
And Andrew McCornick, speak for the farmers here. Will this be a disappointment if it doesn't go ahead for some, do you think?
There will always be somebody that will be disappointed regardless of which way it turns out here. But I must admit, I listened to it, but if we wanted to divide people, we've certainly made a good job of that in Dumfries and Galloway, so we have. And it's really unfortunate. Some of the stuff, especially in social media, has been really unfortunate. I am of the opinion, we've already mentioned it, We've got South of Scotland Enterprise, we've got Borderlands funding, we've got councils, we've got planning. Why do we need to throw another tier in with another level of bureaucracy when we should be looking at what are we not getting right with what we've got here? And Colin's right, we need investment in this area, but we've actually got the tools in this area to do it, but we're not seeming to be able to get the use of them.
Rachel, will this be a missed opportunity if it doesn't happen?
Bigger economics were quite critical of what this would cost in terms of the kind of economic loss, as it were. When we first looked at national parks, there was one proposed in the Borders, and farmers were really worried about it. They were very fearful, and I was talking to them about how the planning may be affected within their scope on their farms, and they couldn't progress. And so there was a lot of worry, just like there is here. And I know that the consultation was very divided. Nature Scot, of course, came out, which is a government quango, and supported the Scottish Government. But the people who are concerned about this asked where the people who were supporting it came from. Are they people that live here? Are they people who are going to be impacted by this and affected by this? And I think these are the questions we need to ask.
Right, well, let's ask the people. Let's hear from the people. Man in the back row in the blue shirt. Yes, on you go.
Yeah, if you look at the NC 500 and the problems that's having at the moment, you know, and all that's going to happen, that's going to happen in Dumfries as well.
OK, all right.
All around the area.
Thank you.
I mean, I've been to enough parks, North Wales, the Lake Districts, and I've seen the problems that they have.
So you think it'll be more traffic?
Oh, yeah, and we haven't got the roads for it.
All right, and let's see...
A75 has enough accidents.
The man 2 in from you as well, yes. On you go.
For all it's a good question, that race has already been run. The interesting question now is, what are Scottish Government going to do to try and rebond the community? Because it's been so divisive. And that was the fault of Scottish Government. Regardless of what side of the debate you sit, that vacuum of information, how big was the park, what was the budget, what was the aims of the park, because of that vacuum of information, people on both sides made up their own information. It was badly organised, badly run, with a huge lack of information.
OK, thank you. And man with the glasses, just in the middle here. Yes.
The figures from the government, they don't actually give us anything for a park. The input from the central government for some of the parks is only 9 million. The rest of the funds for the parks comes from external sources and private enterprise.
OK, OK. We will find out next week, the next stage of this. Thank you very much indeed for all your questions tonight. We're back with you next week in Hamilton for that by-election special. Then Glasgow the week after that. Have a look at our website if you want to come along and join us for either show. If you missed any of tonight, we're repeated a bit later on BBC One Scotland at 10:40, or you can watch it any time that suits you on the BBC iPlayer. Thank you very much indeed to my panel tonight and a brilliant audience here in Dumfries, and to you at home for watching. We'll see you next week in Hamilton. In the meantime, stay safe, stay well. From all of us in Debate Night, good night.